Another setback for President Trump as his rush to try to rule without governing leads to having his plans trimmed, dropped, or outright blocked. Trump began the week backing down from his threatened trade war and ends it with another court ruling trimming his efforts to govern without law or Congress. A judge pausing parts of the attack on USAID. That plan appears to have been mostly hatched not by Trump, but by someone who claims to wield powers on the president's behalf, Elon Musk, leading to this new Time magazine cover with the arch reference to him behind the Resolute desk appearing to be some kind of president in his own Oval Office. This is striking. It follows other covers and commentary that have made similar points. You're probably familiar. Early on, right before the inauguration, you had the New Yorker magazine cartoon showing Musk, not Trump, getting sworn in with President Trump. You can see the tuft of blonde hair in the cartoon being sort of pushed out of the frame. Now, politicos know that when Time runs a cover like that, it can be the kiss of death for Trump allies who are stealing his press, or perceived as such. In fact, just last night, we showed you the first-term Steve Bannon Time cover, which stoked a rivalry. That was before this new Red Time cover was published. I have more on the politics of that in a moment. While any potential vibe shift here against Musk matters because his actions are impacting real people, his standing to claim authority on behalf of Trump does turn on and require his ongoing proximity or alliance with Trump. And right now, Musk's efforts to gut the aid agency, to oust staff are ongoing. Courts could later roll some of this back, and some things are being trimmed, as I mentioned. But meantime, Musk's push, well, it already has the agency's name being scrapped, literally pulled down, you can see there, off the headquarters. Musk trying to seize sensitive information and override congressional decisions. His teams involved in several different agencies when he's not a cabinet leader of any of them, actually. There was a confusing scene at the Education Department today where some Democrats made a point to show that Musk's aides, apparently, because it was a bit confusing, were trying to block basic access for people to walk into the building, including from a co-equal branch of government. Even conservatives and Trump allies are noticing Musk's personal agenda can compete with theirs. He has these conflicts, expensive government contracts. He stands to make more from new Trump rule changes, more money, ending programs which had boosted competitors to Musk's Tesla, a move which we will always show you the evidence and the details. Elon Musk himself said the thing that they're now doing could be devastating to his automobile rivals.
I guess that there would be like some impact, but I think it would be devastating for our competitors, but and it would hurt Tesla slightly. But long-term probably actually helps Tesla.
That's now what's happening. Now, Elon Musk may get away with some of this. He may execute on these plans in a way that things are happening. I just showed you some of them. Although picking enough fights with enough different sources, including those other business rivals, could take a toll. And remember, this is someone who has different types of experience, but almost no experience working inside the U.S. federal government. The tactics he used in business, which have at times worked in the past, what they call rush and break things, it's different here. And we are in the early days, and it's already sparking more pushback when tried through the federal government. Judges already ruling against him. More cases coming. Attorneys general in 13 different states moving against what they call allegedly unlawful Musk actions. And that there, which I've just ran through in a couple minutes, that's just some of the law and substance. Then there's the politics I mentioned. Let's be clear. This is exactly the kind of cover that is dangerous for the star behind the presidential desk there. And anyone around Donald Trump knows that. Trump was famously upset at his aide Steve Bannon upstaging him on that cover I showed you and mentioned yesterday, the Time magazine cover, with the storyline about Bannon, not Trump, but Bannon being this great manipulator, which implied that it was Bannon really calling the shots. Now, that concern or that dynamic has even more evidence right now with all of the stories we and our colleagues here at MSNBC and many print reporters have been documenting that obviously Musk is calling big shots. And now he's getting presidential-type press. Reporters documenting this. And we know Trump obsesses over press coverage. Now we have the same glory bestowed on an advisor that we know upsets Trump. Both of them even whether you consider it playfully or even disrespectfully referred to as a president, President Bannon. Can anyone stop President Musk? That's from this month. And then out in the public, people on the internet using social media. Of course, Musk is a social media baron himself. They're getting in on this with jokes and trolling about Donald Trump's supporting role. This is all familiar because this is how people in power tend to have conflict. I don't want to go too deep here, but there are ancient teachings about how history might not, quote, repeat itself, but human nature endures. So you see a lust for power and greed and jealousy. These are things that animate people, both the ruler and the ruler's inner circle. In fact, with this being the story tonight, I want to remind you, we recently heard from a very interesting scholar of power strategy, Robert Greene. He discusses what he calls certain laws that endure in power clashes across history, across continents. And his very first law, back in the news tonight, is never outshine the master in your desire to please or impress. Do not go too far to display your talents, or you might accomplish the opposite. The leader will eventually resent you, potentially oust or crush you. Bannon lived that lesson. Now, Musk clearly thinks laws don't apply to him. And maybe that's been true sometimes with U.S. laws, which can be slowly applied in court. And everybody knows this. You don't have to follow the news to know this. In this country, like others, sometimes those laws are applied less strenuously against the rich and powerful. But what about a foundational law of power? Could that still apply even as somebody routes around the other laws? And I'm using the words directly here, right? A law of power is not passed by the government. But the very power and fame that Musk wields is what brings Musk some danger here, because his boss, and the president is the boss here. There's no government authority or election that Musk can claim or invoke. It is that fame which also clearly matters to Trump. And that's a reason that power reveals and can divide. A reason scholars have tracked this for such a long time, a reason that other power experts like Sean Carter spoke about how your own assets can be used precisely against you. The quote goes, "The same sword they knight you, they gonna good knight you." And that's only half if they like you. That ain't even the half of what they might do. See Pac, see success and its outcome. See Jesus, see Judas. See Caesar, see Brutus. See success is like suicide. If you succeed, prepare to be crucified. Bars. Now, that's some poetic license, which also refers to real, known histories of power and power struggles, and violating what we called that first law by Robert Greene, never outshine the master, which is happening right now tonight in a time cover that we know people in Washington are seeing, as well as on their televisions. So what does the president think of all this talk about another president upstaging him? Well, for once, he was speechless.
Mr. President, do you have a reaction to the new Time magazine cover that has Elon Musk sitting behind your Resolute desk?
Time magazine.
No. What is that you just heard? It's actually something pretty rare. It's the sound of Donald Trump refusing to say anything to a question on camera, which sounds like some kind of cooling in the Trump-Musk relationship, at least for today, at least for the end of this week. Elon Musk is posting about his personal platonic love for Trump, laying it on really thick, suggesting maybe he's noticed a problem for the two of them here, and he's trying to get out in front of it and get public with it, again, against the backdrop of that cover. Now, there are some facts that still make Musk different than Bannon, who I mentioned, and most other political people in Trump's orbit. Elon Musk is the richest person in the world, running the global X platform, which has more reach than most press barons across history combined, past and present. I mean, he can't just be constrained if there was a political breakup. And he controls this tech medium, which does shape American political discourse, especially on the right. He is not just a staffer or aide to be dismissed. And he is, according to judges, skirting, defying, or breaking laws. And he is, according to power scholars, breaking the very first law of power.